Morning. Good. Yep. All right. Back into our class. Good morning, Indy. It looks like it's you and me for now. We'll see if anybody else shows up. Okay. But it is 8 o'clock, so I'm not going to waste your time. I'm going to get started. If you have any questions, just let me know. Oh, there's Brianna. Good. Okay. So let me let Brianna get in to the course. You hear me okay? Everybody's. Good morning, Bree. I'm gonna put you on mute. Oh, okay.
Good morning.
Okay. Thanks, Andy. Okay, good. So before we get started with our discussion for today with Chapter 9, I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of the policy for grading for the semester is available now, if you weren't. So I'm just going to show you really quick. Go into my Google. Okay. Go into your student portal so you can see where it's at. Actually, I haven't been here yet to look for it, but you would click on, I believe, the COVID-19 information, and that's where you're going to get the COVID latest college information. Okay, and there is the new grading policy. So just the skinny on it is that the way I am to proceed as a faculty member is that I assign a grade as I normally do. My responsibility is out of that once I give you your grade. Then it's up to you, and I have to find out what the process is because they haven't identified it yet, but it's up to you to contact someone. I'm assuming it would be the registrar within 7 days of May 20th of 2020. If you would like your grade changed to pass satisfactory, PS, which if your initial letter grade was a C or better, you could have it changed to that, has no impact on your GPA. Letter grades impact on the GPA. If you had a D in the course, they will change it to a PD. That course will not transfer, but it doesn't, that D does not affect your GPA. So neither one of these will impact your GPA at LCC, but if it's a PD, it's like getting a D in the course as far as transferring that course to another college. And it goes on to talk about that. And then there's some frequently asked questions in here. So I'm in the process of finding out how the heck you even do this. Because somebody asked me that yesterday. I'm like, I don't know, right? So I'll find out and I'll let you know. But it just goes on to talk about if you need to withdraw, if you're in need of an incomplete, which at this point, unless you get very, very sick, have a family member extremely sick that you need to care for, or some other extraordinary emergency, you might as well just finish the course because you have these options. The incomplete option is for those of students who may not have internet access at home and aren't able to gain it. So they need to wait until facilities open to allow them to go back on the internet. So that's really what that incomplete grade is being used for this semester. But if you have any questions on it, just let me know. But that is, again, in the student portal under COVID-19 information, again, right here, and then COVID-19 latest college information. Okay. All righty. All right, well then we are going to get back into chapter 9. We'll start it actually. Let me stop sharing this and grab my PowerPoint. We'll follow along with that. So my plan today is to get through about half the chapter, talk about these various capital budgeting decision tools, and then wrap up the chapter on Thursday. So you should see PowerPoint for chapter 9 right now. Oh, good. We're getting more and more of you joining us. And if you have any questions as we're going, make sure you stop me. Either throw a chat out there or you can unmute yourself. But from your reading, you can see chapter 9 is about what we call net present value and other investment criteria. So what we're going to be looking at, some of the key concepts and skills are show the reasons why this thing called net present value criterion is the best way to evaluate proposed investments. So we're going to talk more about what are we talking about investments here. So we need to kind of back up first. So the very first tool we could use to make a decision about investing in something is net present value, or we could use something called the payback rule. But it has a lot of shortcomings, but we're going to make you aware of it. We have another tool we could use for investment decisions called discounted payback rule. And we'll look at why it's not the best, but it's a tool. We're also going to look at today what's called the accounting rates of return and the problems associated with them when you're using them to make investment decisions. And probably one of the best, besides net present value, best tools to use is the internal rate of return tool for calculating investment decisions. Maybe we'll get to that today. If not, we'll pick up with it on Thursday. And then you can see there's two more. One's called modified internal rate of return and the other profitability index. So these are all just tools that are available for making what we call investment decisions. So there they are, all just lined up. So that's an overview of the chapter. Now, let's get into this. So on page 273, it's not on our PowerPoint here. This is really important. It's the second paragraph on the page, and it's the first sentence. The most fundamental decision a business must make is its product lines. What are we going to sell? Should we sell it? Should we stop selling that? In order to do that, they have to make good capital investment decisions. They need to determine what kind of assets should we buy to support that product line? What kind of projects should we take on? okay? And when they're doing this, they're creating what we call a capital budget. Capital being long-term asset purchases to support your main business activities. We're not talking about here how you get the money, okay? We're talking about what you need to reach your goals in your company. So every one of these purchases or projects must go through an evaluation. And that's what this chapter tells us about. What tools are out there to help us evaluate if we should take on a project, if we should expand the company into France, or should we buy 100 more dump trucks for our dump truck company, okay? So any type of asset purchase or project where assets are being purchased to support it, we need to see, is it worth it? Does it add wealth to the company? Because wealth to the company, value, helps us achieve our shareholder value. And that's our main huge objective in finance, giving shareholders value. So this is really important. Some of the things we want to look at when we're making our decision and evaluating, we want to focus on tools that look at time value of money. That's really important. That's why we learned about present value and future value, because our decision criteria is all based in time value of money, present value and future value. Do we adjust our decision for risk? Does the decision provide information on whether we are creating the value? So these are the good decision criteria. These things need to be present to really make a good decision about investing. Capital budget. Come on, you. There we go. So I said we're going to be looking at different tools that are available to people in the finance area to determine should they take on projects or purchase assets. Now, when we're doing this, we need to identify, and Chapter 10 is going to talk more about it with us. We need to identify the initial outflow and the inflows, and we focus on cash. No matter what method we're using, we need to define those. So that's really our starting point. How much is that asset going to cost? How much net cash will it bring in each year we're going to use it? And it's these amounts that are evaluated in the different tools. Our first tool, net present value, which is one of the most widely used. What is this? It's taking the difference between the market value of the project, essentially the present value of your cash inflows, and comparing it to how much the asset costs or the project costs. If that amount is positive, the difference between those two is positive, we say you have a positive net present value, we normally take on those kind of projects. They will add value to the company. If it's negative, it costs more to buy this asset than it's going to bring in cash over time. So it is a negative present value. The decision would be not to take on that project. So we're going to take some time here and show you how we do the calculations. So again, how much value is created from undertaking an investment, and no matter what method, what tool you use here, net present value being the first step is to estimate the expected future cash flows. And that's all you can do is estimate. You base it on past experience. You base it on information in the industry, the economy. These are things that you really have to take your time with. And there's tools to make sure you're estimating correctly, which we'll see in future chapter. The second step is to estimate what is the required return for projects of this risk level. Percentage-wise, how much money do we want to make back on that initial investment, on that initial purchase of the asset? So you have to come up with that. The third step then is now find the present value of all those cash flows you predicted using that required rate of return as your interest percentage. That will give you the present value, so what those future cash flows are worth today. So we have to determine, what is that money we're going to get in the future worth today, and then compare it to how much cash we're actually paying today. So jot these down. If you don't have the PowerPoint in front of you or you can't refer back to it, take a few minutes and just jot these down. It's a project. We're going to be using this throughout the rest of our discussion today. And make sure you have your calculator with you, your finance calculator. I'll give you a few minutes to jot down this project information. So a company's deciding to, I don't know, build a building. I know this is ridiculously low amounts of money, or maybe build a piece of equipment or buy a piece of equipment. That's what we'll do. They're going to buy a piece of equipment. The equipment's going to cost them $165,000 today. What will this equipment give them cash flow wise? Well, they expect to use this equipment, it looks like 3 years, and the cash flow each year is presented. CF, so at the end of year 1, cash flow is $63,120. At the end of year 2, cash flow is $70,800. And at the end of year 3, cash flow is $91,080. Now, we just don't add those numbers all up and go, oh, wow, we're going to have like over $200,000 in cash flow. Because we know that money has an interest component in it. That money could have been invested and earned money. So we need to bring out the interest that's in that future cash, take it out by calculating its present value. Then we could do a true comparison. Right now, if we just added up all the 1, 2, and 3, we could say those are the oranges and the initial cash outflow is an apple. We're not comparing the same fruit. Now, NI, jot those down, net income. We'll be using them for a different tool. So the net income at the end of year 1 from using this equipment, $13,620. Net income is $3,300 for year 2, and year 3 is $29,100. Now remember, net income is different than cash flow. Cash flow doesn't have any kind of depreciation component subtracted to get to it, but net income does. Average book value, you also want to jot down for a future tool, $72,000. So you have to do this part, and it would be given to you in problems in the chapter. And then you need to decide a required rate of return. Now, that could be something your boss tells you. That could come from the CFO or the CEO. That may not be something you decide. They just say, this is what we want to see on this type of project. And that all comes with experience for your industry and being in the finance area. So don't think that your first job, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to try to decide what the required rate of return is. No, you're not. Okay. But if they say, let's do some net present value calculation, well, you should probably be familiar with that. That's why you're in the class. Okay, so here comes our first tool. Now, again, if the net present value is positive, we accept the project. So this means, again, the project is expected to add value to the firm. and increase the wealth of the owners. And that's our objective here. Since our goal is to increase owner wealth, net present value is a direct measure of how well this project will meet our goal. Now, again, if you're sitting there, well, we're estimating everything. That is so true, and things could change. Okay, but right now we have to make a decision based on our best estimates. So let's compute it. So if you're using a TI-83 or a TI-84, okay, or any calculator that has the apps. Now, this is more, I believe, the BA2, okay? And I'm not as familiar with that. There are great YouTube videos for all the different calculators out there. Quite honestly, some of the things in this chapter, I had to go, oh my gosh, how do I enter this in my calculator? I know how to do it in Excel, but I don't know how to do it in the calculator. So I just took me 2 minutes. I went, Googled in YouTube, or searched in YouTube. I said, how to calculate net present value in a TI-83 Plus? And there's like 3,000 videos on it. So, you know, don't, if you're like, I can't do this in my calculator, just like I said, go out to YouTube and search, and you will find a video. And if you're still having problems, just let me know. But they're giving you, if you do have the ability to put what we call uneven cash flows in your calculator. And like I said, this is not the calculator I use here. I use the TI-83. Mine's a little different. It's more like Excel. If you're doing this manually, it's not hard to do. Net present value is, first of all, here's your initial cash outlay minus 165,000. What do we do next? We add to that the present value of the first cash flow, 63,120. Remember, present value is found by dividing that future value by 1 plus the interest rate to the number of periods powered. So the first period, that would be 1. That would be the present value just of that cash flow. Here's the end of year 2s. Take 70,800 divided by 1 plus the required rate of return to the number of periods powered, because that is at the end of year 2, that cash flow. We need to determine it at time 0. That would be to the second power. That would be the present value of that cash flow. And we would do the same thing with the calculating the cash value, the present value of the cash flow at the end of period 3. So once you subtract that initial cash outlay from all the positive cash inflows at the present value, this project has a positive 12,627.41. Now, if you have the apps button on your calculator, so mine does, I'm going to click on it. You go into finance, but don't click on time value of money solver. There's a specific formula in the calculator. Mine is number 7, actually. It's NPV. So I'm going to arrow down or just hit the number 7 and then enter. Whoops, I was fooling around in here. Okay. And it'll automatically come up, NPV, with a parenthesis. Now, how do we enter the information? The first thing you will enter is your interest rate in the parenthesis. And it's just the number 12 for our example. I'm looking at my calculator. Okay. Then you have to make a comma within the formula. And mine's right above the number 7 on my number pad. Then you're going to enter your initial cash outflow, and you put it in as a minus. So that little minus sign in parentheses on your number pad, 165. You don't have to put a comma for the thousandths position. Then a comma. Now you have to enclose in brackets. They have a special name for them, but I just call them the brackets. all your cash inflows. Now, the way I get my bracket, it's not a parenthesis, is I hit the second key and then the right-sided parenthesis, because above it, it shows a little bracket. Now I'm going to enter positive 63,120, comma, positive 70,800, comma, and positive 91,080. So you will put all of your positive cash inflows in that bracket, no matter how many there are. Then you have to close the bracket. So I hit the second, and I guess it would be the parenthesis facing to the left. And then the parenthesis again, just to close your initial parenthesis. So I'm going to, let me see if you guys, what you can see and what you can't. Okay. Let me turn off my, I know it's kind of backwards there, but that's what mine looks like. Okay. So then I'm going to solve, just like I did when I was calculating present value, or no, I'm sorry, I just hit enter. No solving, just hit enter. And I get positive 12,627.41. Now, if you're like, I like to use Excel. Excel has the formulas as well. So let me take a second here and show you that. Let me open up Excel. All right. Sorry, let me get this opened. Okay. So of course, just like our calculating present value or future value or annuity calculations, in our financial formulas in Excel, we have NPV. Okay. Now, the first thing you enter is your discount rate. And I think I just enter it in as 12. Okay. I can practice this, so bear with me a second. Okay, so now I'm going to return the net present value of the future payments negative. Okay. Well, I need some help with this function. When you're not sure, you can ask for help. So it comes out and it tells us, here's, I don't know if you can see that. Let me stop sharing and I'll show you my help screen. What the heck? There we go. So it tells us how to enter information related to the NPV. Now, if you see here, it says enter your rate, enter value 1. Okay. So here we go. I like examples, right? We learn by doing. So the annual discount rate for this investment, which ours would be 12, is 10. Then we have the initial cost times 0, and then the cash inflows. So if these were in A2, A3, A4, 5, and 6, NPV equals first your discount rate, then your initial cost, then each of your remaining items. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing, come back over to Excel, and try that. Let's see if it works. So I'm going to put this in as 0.12. Then I'm going to put in minus 165,000. Then I'm going to put in my first positive cash flow, then my second, and finally my third. Pretty close. Let me make sure I have everything right. 63,120, 91,080. 165. Click OK. Let's see, I think I'm off a little bit. They're getting 12,627. And my Excel sheet, what did I do wrong? Let's just have fun with this and see. Ah, that's closer. Now it's saying it's negative though. Whoa. 63,120, 70,800, 91,080. So if this comes up negative, it looks like it's not a good deal. I don't know why it's not coming up the way it should. It's positive though. I'll have to investigate that some more. But we should get the same result as we did in our calculator. So I'm just doing something not correct and I'm not seeing what it is. But I'll find out and I'll come back on Thursday. I think there's some Excel in here also. So let me write myself a note. Sorry about that. I'm not perfect at it either. But no, this formula's in here. You can use that. I think there's something else I have to identify here and I'm just not sure what it is. Okay, I practiced my calculator. I didn't practice my Excel. Let's go back to our PowerPoint. Let's see where we're at. So, according to this project, we should accept it because the present value, or I'm sorry, the net present value is positive. So remember our decision criteria, if it's a good tool or not. Does this tool account for the time value of money? Yes. Does it account for the risk of cash flows? Yes. That 12% interest rate was the normal interest rate for cash flows with the risk associated with the project. Does the NPV rule provide an indication about the increase in value? Yes, it was $12,627. Should we consider the NPV rule for our primary decision rule? Yes, because it takes all these things into account and it is a widely used tool for determining if this project will add wealth to the company, which will add wealth and value to our owners. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I knew there was one in here. Let's practice again with it, see what I screwed up. So I'm going to click on the little Excel icon and I'm going to make sure you can see it. It'll probably tell me what I did wrong. Let me move this over. Come on, you. Okay. So what the book does, oh, see, that's what I did. I entered the formula wrong. Good. So that little help sheet wasn't as helpful as we thought. Oh, I see. Okay. If you see up here, there is how I should have entered the information in Excel for calculating net present value. And the first thing that should be done is, of course, equals NPV. Then your interest rate should have been added. So they reference B4 here. Now they use cells because if you just want to change one thing, you can recalculate your NPV very quickly. If you enter numbers, you got to go back into the formula, enter the correct you could just make too many mistakes that way. So cell references are much better. Then, comma, now indicate your positive cash flow. So C2, D2, E2. And so we just show the range of cells. C2 colon E2. The program knows just those are your positive cash inflows. Close your bracket and then add B2, which would be really a subtract B2. That gives us our proper, our proper amount. So so that was wrong. You don't include B2 as I did. You put it outside the parentheses of your cash inflows. Excellent, good. I'm glad we were able to resolve that. Any questions on that? Okay, hope I didn't jazz you up too much. Let's go back. Okay. And this is just the steps to do that. So that's your first tool. And one of the most widely used because it meets all those criteria for making a good capital decision. Now, another tool that can be used is something called payback period. And maybe you've heard of this. Maybe you even do it for your own decision making. How long does it take to get the initial cost of the project back in a nominal sense, in total? So there's no calculations of present value. We just say, here's our cash flows for the project each year. When will those cash flows added up equal the initial cost of the project? That's how long it takes us to get our money back. Now, the decision rule here is that maybe the company says, we want to get the initial amount of the equipment cost back in cash within 3 years. So you have to create a limit. Now let's see if that occurs. So if we go back to our original situation here, the cash outflow is $165,000. By the end of year 1, the cash inflow or the amount recovered is $63,120. By the end of year 2, they recover another $70,800. So they have recovered, by cash coming in, a total of $133,920. They still have $31,080 to recover. They recover a total of $91,080 in year 3. So they recover all of the investments sometime between year 2 and year 3, probably about a third of the way into year 3, because they only needed $31,000. They actually make $91,080 during the year. So if you look at it, about 1/3 of it was earned, in the first few months of the year. So about 1/3 of the year is when they completed recapturing that $165,000. So then we ask, well, what was our original preset limit? We said 3 years. And so if that's the case, we would probably accept the project. Now, is this a good decision criteria? 1, does it account for the time value of money? No, nowhere. You're comparing apples and oranges. Does it account for risk at all? Nope. There's no, discount rate being used here. We're just saying, here's how much money we're going to pay, and here's how much we're going to receive over time. Does it tell us how much increase in value there will be? No. It ignores any money made on this project once you recapture the initial amount you paid. So once you figured out when you make that $165,000 back, it ignores everything in the future. Should we consider this as a primary decision rule? No, but it is a tool. Why would we use it? Why would a company use it? It's easy to understand. You don't do any special type of calculations. You don't need to know how to use Excel or your fancy calculator or no formulas. You just go, here's how much cash we have to pay. Here's when we're going to get that money back by. It adjusts for uncertainty of later cash flows, and it's biased on the short term. So that means towards liquidity. So it's a short term, it's a good decision-making tool for minor decisions that you don't need to be, and it's very short-term money. So the time value of money isn't a huge impact on the project. But longer-term projects, not good, because it ignores the time value of money. It just gives an arbitrary cutoff. Who comes up with that? How do you know 2 years? But in the mind of the company, you want to say it that way, they have a time period that they want to have that money back by. So if they get their money back by that time period, maybe they'll do that very short-term project that's minor. Requires an arbitrary cutoff. Okay, ignores cash flow beyond the cutoff date, and it's biased against long-term projects because it's not accounting for that time value of money. So it's good for minor, very short-term decisions. Okay, so that's why we tell you about it. Is there any questions on that? Payback. Now we can modify the payback just a little bit, okay? And that is where we actually do account for the time value of money now. So what we do here is, instead of comparing and determining when will we get our initial outflow back in nominal dollars, we take those cash flows and we discount each one back, each one separately. And then we sum those and we say, okay, now we're going to compare our initial outflow to our accumulated inflows at present value. So now we are really comparing apples to apples. Now let's see how long it takes us to recapture our money when we're comparing both at present value. So if the project pays back on a discounted basis within a specified time, it's still payback. How long does it take to get our initial investment back? But it's a better tool than just payback, because now you are taking those cash flows and bringing them back to present value. So we're going to take a look at that now. So if we have this project and we accept the project if it pays back our cash, initial cash, within 2 years. So what we do is we say, okay, we get $63,120 at the end of year 1. But how much is that $63,120 worth today? So actually, I'm going to take us out of here and I'm going to go into Excel so we can see these calculations. So the discounted payback period. So here's our year. Here's the cash flow. And here is the present value of the cash flow. At time 0, the cash flow is negative 165. Present value would be negative 165. That's right now. At the end of year 1, our cash flow is $63,120. Now we're using a discount rate here. So, oops, let me do an equals PV. And because I love to use, let me do this, the dialog box instead of the formula, remembering what to enter in the formula. I want to make sure I have everything right. My rate is 0.12. My N will be 1. There's no payment. That's for annuities. This is not an annuity calculation because the numbers are not the same. Each cash flow is different. Future value is $63,120. Okay, so, and I'm going to make that positive. Put that in as a negative number. At the end of year 1, I have recouped, present value wise, $56,357. So I'm going to take my C8 and add C9. So I still have $108,642.86 to recoup when it comes to present value. Let's see what happens at the end of year 2. End of year 2, my inflow is $70,800. Now I'm going to find the present value of those. Present value here. Present value, my rate, 0.12. My number of periods is 2 because this is at the end of the second period. My present value, I'm going to put in as negative 70,800, so it'll give me a positive result. So that is 56,441. So I'm going to take, I still haven't recouped it all. Let's see how much closer I'm getting. D10, whoops. D10 plus C11. So I'm taking and I'm saying, okay, we've recouped this much of the 165,000. Let's see how much there is at the end of year 3, present value wise. My number is 91,080. Present value, let's see if I remember how to do it. The 0.12, number of periods is 3. There's no payment. My future value is $91,080. So I recoup $64,828. So of the 52,000, sorry, I should put that in as a negative so that it comes up positive cash flow. So I do recoup all of the 165,000, but by the end of period 3, but it's probably near the end because I still needed to recoup 52,201. And by the end of that period of time, I recouped 64,828. So probably about 80% of the year passes before I get my money back. So it's at 2 years and maybe 10 months, 9 months. Does that meet my rule? So that is what the PowerPoint is showing you. Go over here. Right there. Okay. So do we accept or reject this project? Well, based on our decision-making technique up here, we would reject this because we did not get back all the 165,000 by the end of year 2. So it's another tool that could be used using payback, but now it's better than just normal payback because now when we're determining when we get our initial money back, we are looking at cash flows from the same perspective, present value. So does the discounted payback rule account for the time value of money? Yes. Does it account for the risk of cash flow? Yes. Does the discount payback rule provide an indication about the increase in value? No. It just tells us when we get our original 165,000 back. It doesn't tell us how much more we make than that $165,000 investment, like net present value does. So should we consider this a primary decision rule? No. Again, it's better than normal payback, but should it be the only rule you use? Probably not. So here's our advantages and disadvantages again. It includes time value of money, easy to understand. It doesn't accept negative estimated net present value investments. And it's biased towards liquidity. Again, these are good for short-term decisions where we convert our cash very quickly, or our project is converted to cash very quickly. Disadvantage. Because we're just looking at when we get our money back, we may actually reject a positive with a positive net present value. We did. In this one, if we used our net present value tool, we said, accept that project if it's a positive net present value. It was $12,600 something dollars. So under that tool, it says accept it. But under this tool, because we gave it this arbitrary payback period, we rejected it. So we might actually reject something that we shouldn't because of that arbitrary cutoff point. And it ignores cash flow beyond the time you get your money back. So it's very biased against long-term projects. It shouldn't be used for that reason. Again, short-term decision-making, it's better than regular payback because it's a little bit more precise. But beyond that, it's not a fabulous tool for long-term projects. So we're showing you the different types of tools and their advantages and disadvantages. Are there any questions? Okay. I don't even know why they talk about this one, but here's another tool, and it's called the average accounting return. Okay, and it's very simple to calculate this. It's probably why they talk about it. The only thing you need is financial statement. You need an income statement and a balance sheet. The way you calculate this is you take your average net income for the period of time you're looking at for your project, divided by the average book value of the asset you're investing in. Note, the average book value depends on how the asset is depreciated. So you would be given that. You need to have a target cutoff rate. So again, the company's coming up with this arbitrary amount or percentage. What kind of return should we get from an accounting perspective, which is very different from a finance perspective? Notice, what are they using to calculate here? Net income. Net income has nothing to do with cash flow, and not the impact cash flow does from a project. Net income follows rules of accrual accounting. Record in revenue when it's earned, record an expense when it happens. It has nothing to do with cash flow. And then you're dividing it by the book value of the asset. So it is a technique, but is it used? Accept the project if your average accounting return is greater than this target rate you came up with, which I don't even know how you would do that. But honestly, maybe based on past project experience and using this type of formula. So I'm not too excited about this tool. Like I said, I don't even know why they talk about it, but assume the company wants an average accounting return of 25% on projects. Well, the way we would calculate the average accounting return for this project is we would take net income for each of the 3 years. So remember our slide, I said, copy these numbers down. So this is why we copy down the net income. So this is easy information to get. Grab it off the financial statements or predict it very quickly. Net income, year 1, 2, and 3 is divided by 3. So the average net income is $15,340. They give us the average book value of 72,000. So we divide the 72,000 into 15,340. All we're saying here is the average, if you want to look at this investment from an average perspective, the average investment was 72,000 and it made an average income of $15,340. So it returned a 21.3% rate. Now, it doesn't even reach what we wanted to. We want a 25%. So somebody in the company is giving us that number. We're doing the calculation here, or maybe at some point we are that person coming up with the 25%. But based on these criteria, we would reject this project. Now, here's another reason it doesn't really make sense to use this. There's no time value of money at all in this. We're not even using cash flows for assessing this rate of return. It doesn't provide any indication about increase in value. So should this be a primary decision rule? No, but it's out there. It's easy to calculate. And the information you need to calculate will usually be available because it's already projected or budgeted. But it's not a true rate of return because time value of money is ignored. It's not even basing it off of cash flow. It's basing it off of old book values and activity, not on cash. And cash is really what we're focused on here in finance. It uses an arbitrary benchmark cutoff rate that who knows, it may be based on past history, but we're letting you know that it is another tool and why it's not really that useful to make these kind of decisions. So we had net present value, payback, discounted payback, average accounting return. Any questions? So we're going to start, we'll probably be able to talk a little bit about this before we end today, and that is on another tool that is widely used. So we have net present value widely used, and this thing called internal rate of return. So this is the most important alternative to net present value. It is often used in practice, and it is based entirely on the estimated cash flows and is independent of interest rates found elsewhere. So what does that mean? If you look on page 285 of your book, okay, what this is calculating or determining is the rate of return only of a particular investment. Okay, so it's actually calculating your return where net present value is 0. It's not negative and it's not positive. It's at 0. When we did our calculation before, we said, assume there's a discount rate of 12%. That's our required rate of return. With a required rate of return of 12%, your project was a positive net present value. It added wealth. Well, what we're doing here is really figuring out what is the rate of return on this project. If we put this much money into it and get this much cash flow, what is the actual return? Now, if that is greater than what we're requiring, 12%, you accept the project. So we need to be able to use our financial calculator. If not, we are doing trial and error process. So we're going to show you how to do the internal rate of return on our project. And we'll show you in Excel. You need your information. So we're going to, in your calculator, if you have your apps, finance, and then like my screen, I have 7 menu options. I'm going to use my arrow key, and my IRR formula in my calculator is right after my NPV. So we have an actual formula in our finance calculators, internal rate of return. And how we calculate internal rate of return is very similar to how we calculate net present value. Now, we don't have a discount amount. We're trying to figure out what is the rate of return. So we're first going to have a parenthesis show up. The first thing we're going to put is our initial cash outflow, minus 165. I think then we put a comma. Then just like net present value, we have to put a bracket and enter each of our positive cash flows. So I'm going to hit my second key and my parenthesis. That would create a bracket where the little nook, little caret is pointing to the left to open my bracket. And then I'm going to put positive 63,120, comma, 70,800, comma, and 91,080. Then I'm going to hit my second key and close my bracket, and then my parenthesis. Then enter. And I get 16.13%. So that means the cash outflow compared with the cash inflow, the actual return we are getting on our money from this investment is 16.13%. It's like saying we put 165,000 in our savings account, and over the next 3 years, we're getting 16.13% interest. That's how you could look at it. So should we take on this project? Absolutely, because we are only wanting to get a 12% return on our initial investment of 165,000. We're actually getting a higher rate of return than we want. So this is calculating the percentage of how much you're actually getting on only this project, because it's only comparing your cash outflows to your cash inflows from this project. Now, we could take a look here. And you could see how net present value and the discount rate, the relationship. So if your discount rate is 0, okay, your present value calculation would be 60,000. But as your discount rate increases, so your internal rate of return increases, that's what our discount rate here is, the net present value decreases. And here's where it equals 0. So what we're saying here is that you will have positive net present value over this quadrant and negative net present value. You see how your net present value decreases as your internal rate of return keeps going. So it's just a picture depicting how net present value and internal rate of return are related. Does the internal rate of return rule account for time value of money? Yes, because we're determining a discount rate. Does it account for the risk of the cash flows? Yes. Does it provide an indication about increase in value? Yes. It's telling us what actual return we are getting. Should we consider it? Yes. So the advantages is knowing a return is intuitively appealing. So seeing that, wow, we're going to make 16% compared to 12. That's great. It is a simple way to communicate the value of a project to someone who doesn't know all the estimation details. So if you say, well, we have a net present value of 12,630, think about yourself before this class. If you've never dealt with net present value or present value at all, you'd be like, what? Present value? Maybe sometimes I even sit there and go, what? Right? So maybe you're still even sitting there sometimes like that. But if somebody says, oh, we wanted to get a 12% return and we're getting 16, that tells a little bit more to somebody who doesn't understand all this finance stuff behind it, all these calculations. So if the internal rate of return is high enough, you may not need to estimate a required rate of return. You might go, wow, that's so high, we're doing it. We don't even get, we're not worried about a required rate of return to compare it to. So before I finish, and I'm going to come back to this on Thursday, you can do this calculation in Excel, and I'm going to go to Excel to show it to you. I'm going to let the author show you, right? Let me make sure you can see this. There we go. Okay. So, of course, this was our net present value calculation before. Now, internal rate of return, that's what we're calculating. That's the cell that's highlighted. I think that was me fooling around over here, and I saved it by accident. But what is the internal rate of return? Here's your formula. Up here in the formula bar, you do equals IRR. Okay, and then a parenthesis. And since you're only calculating this for one project, you could just say B2 to E2. You don't need to put the dollar signs around it. What that does is keep them constant. Okay, it keeps those cells constantly stated if you start copying and pasting this formula. That's all. And it automatically, so in this one, you do show, hey, I want you to compare this cash outflow to all these cash inflows right in the parentheses. And it does, and it gives you 16.13%. So just like your calculator does. And then if you want to change something, watch this. So in Excel, when you use cell references instead of the actual numbers, watch that 16.31%. Now it just increases. I changed one cell. I changed my amount that I thought for year 2. So if you're changing these estimated cash flows, that will update your internal rate of return quickly. So it's more for efficiency we use those cell references. Any questions? Let's see where I'm at here. So take a look. For this project we looked at, if we used the net present value to determine if we should take the project or not, we would have accepted it. But if we used the payback period instead, we would have rejected it because we said, oh, we want our money back in this time period, and it didn't happen according to our cash flows. We even rejected it if we used the discounted payback period because we said, oh, we want our money back in 2 years. It's going to take almost 3 years. Even with that average accounting return, we said, oh, we want a 25% average accounting return, and it came in at 21%. But using the internal rate of return, we accepted it. Those two major tools that utilize all of the criteria for making a decision allowed us to accept the project, where the other tools that aren't as strong and really take into account all the criterion for making a good decision with regards to projects and capital budgeting, would have caused us to reject it. So you can see why net present value and the internal rate of return are the more acceptable tools, where the other tools might be good for short-term or minor decision making. But net present value and internal rate of return are the methods we want to use for that long-term decision making for capital budgeting. Any questions? All right, guys, I think I'm going to end our lecture here today. And then on Thursday, when we come in, we're going to finish off talking about the rest of the chapter, which it isn't really long, so we'll be able to do some practicing as well. We're going to look at one more tool with, it's called the modified internal rate of return, actually two more tools, and the profitability index. They're also used. We're going to look at if we have a mutually exclusive project or independent project. So we're just going to keep adding to our basic tools here to help us refine our capital budgeting process. So if you guys don't have any questions, then I will see us all on Thursday. Thanks so much for coming.
Miss Laurie, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
I do have a question, but it's not about the class. It's about how are things looking for the next semesters? How do you think we should like schedule our next classes?
Schedule as you normally would. Schedule as you normally would.
Should I choose online or on campus? And then if it comes up,
you choose what you're most comfortable with. If you want to be in the classroom, then you should choose classroom. If it does become a decision where they haven't decided, I was just on a conference call with my boss, and I was asking her the same question. What is it looking like? She goes, we have no idea. And she said, but what they're doing is they're starting to offer more online classes where traditionally they didn't, in case people are not comfortable if the campus does open. But right now we're scheduling as if we will be back on campus in the fall. And if something changes, they'll let us know. But so I would say if you want to be on campus, register on campus. If it becomes, no, we're gonna keep going and remotely, you'll probably meet like you normally would with your professor virtually, like we do.
oh, okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, now summer classes are all online. They're all remote. They changed the whole summer to remote.
Okay, I will, because I have a class schedule for summer, but I wanted to schedule my classes for fall.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I wanted to ask, but I don't know how this is all looking for.
Well, you have some time also. It's only, I shouldn't say that, but because they want you to register as soon as possible. But if you're uncomfortable registering, just give it a little more time, and then maybe you'll have some answers. I'm hoping by the beginning of June at the latest, they'll be able to tell us yes or no, but I'm guessing at that.
Thank you so much, Ms. Laurie.
You're welcome, Jamie.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, then, guys, you have a great rest of your day. Stay safe, and I'll see you on Thursday.
You also, thank you.
Mm-hmm.